So if I just bring up a browser, so I'll get Chrome. So this is a site, you'll see it again next week. So CSS Zen Garden. So what we have here is just a HTML page. It's quite attractive and looks quite nice. Then we'll select this. So the HTML for this page and this page, the HTML files are identical. All we're doing here is we're shifting the set of rules that the browser uses to display or to work out how to display the structured content. So as I click through each of these, again, it's the same content every time, or the same content, same structure. The difference is purely in the CSS or in the rules that are being defined for how the page should fit together. So this is also a demonstration of why we want to separate the content and its structure. So separate the mechanism by which we define the content and its structure from the mechanism by which we define how that should be displayed. So these CSS pages here, or CSS files that are being used here, they're free, they're open source, so you can have a look at them if you like. But they're designed by professional web developers and graphic artists. So obviously nothing like what we'll get to in this course or what I could do. But I think it's a good demonstration of the power of CSS to be able to, or what you can do once you have structured content just by defining different rules about how that should be displayed. But yeah, same HTML on every page. The only difference there is the CSS rules that we're using to say how the page should be displayed. So HTML file. So a HTML file, you can have two file extensions. If you create a HTML file, you can designate it as a HTML file by giving it either the extension .html or .htm. For all intents and purposes, the two are essentially identical. There's historical reasons for that lead to having two file names, but most web servers will see, if it sees a .htm, it will just interpret that as a .html. So for all intents and purposes, they're essentially interchangeable. That said, I think the web server that we've got, the ICT web server that we use for the group project, if you have a .index.html file, it will render, if you place a file named index.html on that web server and you go to that directory, it will display that, instead of giving a directory listing, it will just display that page. I don't think it does that for an index.htm file, but anyway, you can cover that in shoots when you're doing the group project. So a HTML file can contain many different types of content. So we have the actual text or the content that you want the users to be able to see. HTML file will then also have some markups, so HTML tags that specify how that text and content is structured, so that tags that try and ascribe some meaning to the content that we have in our HTML page. We can have references to other documents and files, so we can have references to images, references to videos, references to other HTML pages, so other resources either on the web or on other files on your computer. And also links, so hyperlinks to other resources on the web. Okay, so these are some of the most basic tags, or these are some of the basic tags in HTML. So I'd like to point out that there are a very, very large number of tags in HTML, and you're not expected to be able to learn all of them off by heart. For the purposes of this course, you will need to know a number of them, so certainly all of the tags on this slide you will need to know, in addition to a few others. But yeah, for the most part, when you're actually writing code, say for this course, you'll be able to do so with a reference, or if you were creating, a web page in real life. You'd have tools and things that enabled you to sort of look things up on the fly, or that would sort of abstract some of this, so you didn't have to actually write the raw code yourself. That said, yeah, for the purposes of this course, you will need to know a number of tags, but you don't need to know the whole standard, the whole of HTML. If you're doing the exercises for this course, you should learn the set that you need, though. So you'll need to know these, you'll need to know things like forms, possibly a little bit about tables, but p tags on this. Yeah, but you don't need to know the entire standard. But anyway, so I'll run through some of these tags. So we have doc type. So doc type is a tag that specifies, you use this to tell the browser what type of HTML to expect, or what type of file to expect. So for instance, if you see this tag here, doc type HTML, that specifies that the file that the browser is about to receive is HTML5. There are other doc type strings that you can use for all the types of HTML. I think one of the exercises in last week's tutorial actually got you to look up the doc type string for HTML4. For everything we do in this course, though, excuse me, for all the HTML you write, you will be using HTML5. HTML, so that's every file starts with a HTML tag, so that just specifies the start of the HTML file. Head, so head is the section containing metadata for the page. Title, so I can show a demonstration here actually. So we've got I've got an image of a HTML page with corresponding source here. So we can see the title, baby steps. Again, it's quite small, but you can see that's not actually displayed on as part of the body of the page. The title is the name of the page, and that's appearing in this case up in the tab name for the tab name for the in the browser for the tab containing the page. So everything that goes inside the head is metadata, so essentially data about the page. Anything that goes on the page is then inside the body section. So you can see here I've highlighted in purple everything inside the body, so that's what's displayed on the actual page. We then also have H tags, so H1 through H6. These are heading tags. So these are headings that are displayed on the page, where 1 is the highest level of heading, 6 is sort of the lowest level of heading. So you can see examples here. My first website, Rocks, is a header, level 1 header. Then we've got a level 3 header and a level 2 header, so you can see the size for a level 3 header is less than that of a level 2 header, which is less than that of a level 1 header. Of course, we could specify different CSS rules for this, but by default, the size decreases. One thing also is, as far as nesting different levels of heading, you can use any sizes of heading anywhere on the page. You don't have to, say, start with a H1 and then move to a H2. So here I've got a H1, then then I shift to a H3. So without having any second level heading, I just print a third level heading, then I go back to a second level heading. So you don't have to nest them in order. You can use any level of heading tag anywhere on the page that you want. We then also have P tags. So P tags are used to indicate to the browser that a certain section of content or text is just, it's essentially just a paragraph of text. So you can use it to group several different sentences, but then also to indicate that this text is not a heading, it's not I suppose it's not part of a list, it's just a single atomic paragraph, so that's what you'd use just for normal text on the page. Strong and EM. So in one of the slides last week, and I mentioned that it's bad practice, I did demonstrate that we have the B and I tags, which are not part of the HTML5 standard anymore. They still exist for historical reasons. But B and I tags can be used to bold and italicize text, respectively. This is less than ideal. So we actually have, as an alternative to this, the strong and EM for emphasis, tags. So by default, strong does just bold text, and EM will just give text an italic effect. So you might ask, why do we prefer strong and EM to B and I tags? You know, what's the difference? Well, the idea here is, again, that we need to separate the content and its structure and its meaning from the way in which we want to actually represent that. If we tag a piece of text with a B tag, so let's say we have a particularly important phrase or heading and we want to bold it to be able to demonstrate that, or to be able to highlight it. If we use a B tag, then the browser will just bold it. If we use a strong tag, we then leave it up to the browser to work out how it wants to indicate that this text is particularly important or should be shown in a particularly strong fashion to the user. So the idea here is that by using a B tag, yes, we can emphasize some text, or we can give it text a stronger appearance, but we're being prescriptive to the browser about how we want that to be done. By using the HTML5 strong or EM tags, we're then leaving it up to the browser, or more accurately to whoever's writing the CSS, to work out how they want that content to be emphasized or to be sort of presented in a stronger fashion. We then have UL and OL tags. So an example here with an OL tag. So an OL is for ordered list and UL for unordered list. So these will define, that will correspond to this section here. So we've got an OL. Ordered list is essentially a numbered list. So we can see in this case we've got an OL tag and the list items are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. A UL, so unordered list, would be by default, say, bullet pointed. So you, if you have a set of items that should be numbered, you can use a an OL tag, so for an ordered list. If they should not be numbered, then you can use a UL. And then individual list items are tagged with an LI, with LI tags. So what we've got here is we've got the phrases cool hair, right peeps, funky phone, and wicked smile, and we've tagged each individually with LI to tell the browser that these are each part of, or these are each a single item in a list, and then we've grouped them all with an OL, inside an OL tag, or inside a pair of OL tags, to indicate that all those 4 items belong to one list. What we could do alternatively is, if at this point here I closed the OL tag and started another OL tag, then we'd have 2 separate lists, one with the first 2 items and another with the second 2 items. So general rules for HTML. So we have tags. So we have the content that, so every HTML page you've got the content, but then you've got tags that are used to tell the browser, or that are used to give meaning to the different content on your page. So tags all look like this. So you have every tag starts with or is placed inside a pair of angle brackets. And yeah, so we place the name of the tag inside a pair of angle brackets. For an open tag, we just have the name and the brackets. For a closed tag, we then have the brackets, a / and then the name of the tag. So tags are case insensitive. So if you want, you can write your HTML tags in uppercase or lowercase, or really any combination of the two. As a general rule, I would recommend to just pick one and stick. So whichever you prefer, you feel free to use. Personally, I think it looks nicer if it's all lowercase, but you may feel differently and feel free to use your own method, to follow your own preferences. But whichever method you choose, just be consistent. So this is about readability, which is actually quite important. It's very easy to write a piece of code, go away, come back a week later, look at it, and struggle to work out what you were doing. This is made all the worse when you have code that's, say, indented or structured very badly, or you have inconsistent capitalization in it, it really can affect the readability of code. So you want to try and follow good practices when it comes to having nice, clean, readable code. So tags are covered in angle brackets. They usually come in pairs. So when you open a tag, you will at some point later in the document have to close it. So for an opening tag, an example here with HTML, we'll then need to later in the document have a corresponding close HTML tag. Some tags, however, do not follow this rule. So for example, a P tag doesn't need to be closed. HTML and body, while you should close them, if you don't, the browser will just sort of realize that, okay, we've come to the end of the document, let's just close the body and then close the HTML tag. So while it's not good practice to omit the close tags, the browser will actually, for many tags, will either just be able to work out what you meant anyway, or it will be able to, some tags don't actually, such as P, don't actually come with a close tag, or you don't need it. So the document structure, always start with the doc type just to specify or to tell the browser that you're using HTML5. You then have every HTML page has a HTML tag, has a head section and a body section. So again, HTML encloses the entire document. Doc type tag specifies that we're using the browser should expect to see a HTML5 document. Head contains metadata, so at a minimum, say the title for the page, but then we might also have things like tags that specify the encoding that the file is using. Some of you would have seen in the tutorial last week, there was an exercise that asked you to write some code and then upload it to, so it was called the validator. So it's a tool that would give you or list any errors that you had in your HTML. This by default, so the code that you were asked to write, this would give you a warning saying that the encoding wasn't specified. So it didn't know whether the file was, so it could see it was text file, but it didn't know whether it was, say, written in UTF-8 or ASCII or UTF-16. There, you can use the meta tag, so you can put that in the head to explicitly state what encoding you're going to use. So that might be another thing that you could fit in the head section of the document. You can then also put things like, say, links to CSS files or JavaScript files that you want the browser to load and run. So anything that doesn't go on the page, but that is metadata, so data about the page, goes in the head section. And then the body contains everything that should be displayed or rendered in the browser window. So in this case, for this example here, we have a heading and an ordered list with a single item.